My sister and her husband tried to steal the $425,000 seaside home I bought for our parents, humiliating them and throwing them out. They laughed and called me weak. They forgot one thing. As a financial auditor, I structured the gift as a legal trap they never saw coming. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The drive to the coast was supposed to be my victory lap. I just closed the most grueling audit of my career, and I was exhausted, but in that deeply satisfying way that comes from a job well done. For 3 days, I'd been imagining this moment. Not for me, but for my parents, Helen and Robert. 50 years of marriage. 50 years of sacrificing everything for their children. They deserved this. The seaside cottage wasn't a mansion, despite what the title might imply, but it was a beautiful $425,000 property with a wide porch and views of the ocean. It was their dream. I'd bought it in cash, a clean transaction. It was meant to be a sanctuary for their retirement. I'd given them the keys on their anniversary, and this was my first visit since. I called my mom's cell as I turned onto their new street. No answer. I called my dad, straight to voicemail. A small, cold knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. They were 71 and 74. They weren't always great with their phones, but they knew I was coming. I pulled into the gravel driveway. The knot in my stomach exploded into a fireball. My sister Chloe's garish, bubblegum pink convertible was parked haphazardly near the front steps. Next to it was her husband Mark's beat-up work truck, the one with Mark's quality contracting, peeling off the side. I heard shouting even before I got out of the car. I ran toward the house, my heart pounding. I saw them through the porch rails. My mother, Helen, was huddled on the porch swing, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. My father, Robert, stood trembling in front of Mark, who had his chest puffed out. "This is my house now, old man. Get out!" Mark yelled, jabbing a finger toward the driveway. And then I heard the worst sound. My sister Chloe, filming the entire thing on her phone, laughing. "Say it again, Mark. This is golden content. Oh my God, Dad, your face." My blood ran ice cold. This was their sanctuary, and my sister had turned it into a war zone. The betrayal was a physical blow, more shocking and painful than any financial loss I'd ever audited. I walked up the steps, my briefcase feeling like a block of lead in my hand. What exactly is going on here? Chloe's camera snapped to me, and her laugh died in her throat. Mark just folded his arms, a smug grin spreading across his face. "Lauren," my mother cried, rushing over to me and grabbing my arm. "Thank God. They just showed up this morning with a moving truck. They said we had to leave." "It's a misunderstanding, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm an auditor. I deal in facts, not hysterics." "No misunderstanding, sis," Chloe said, flipping her hair back as she stopped recording. "Mark and I are the new owners. We're lifestyle influencers now, and this is our new coastal brand headquarters." "Chloe, I am not repeating myself. I bought this house for Mom and Dad." "No, you bought it for the family," Mark interjected, his voice oily. "And we're the part of the family that can actually use it. We're going to upgrade this place, make it modern." I looked past him. He had already torn the beautiful, antique brass house numbers off the wall, leaving a scar in the paint. "You need to leave," Mark said, taking a step toward me. "This is private property." The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it was breathtaking. I looked at my father, a man who had worked in a factory for 40 years, now looking so small and defeated on the porch of his own home. "We'll just go, Lauren," my dad murmured, pulling on my mom's arm. It's just not worth the fight." "No," I said, my voice quiet but sharp. Everyone stopped. I turned my gaze from my parents to the two vultures standing in the doorway. "You have both made a terrible, terrible mistake." "The only mistake," Chloe sneered, "was you thinking we'd let Mom and Dad live in a $400,000 house while we're stuck in a condo." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just nodded, a a cold resolve settling over me. I walked my parents back to my car, their suitcases already sitting by the curb like trash. As I drove away, my mind wasn't on the betrayal, or the shouting, or my mother's tears. It was on the stack of paperwork sitting in my briefcase. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I settled my parents into a comfortable suite at the best hotel in town. As soon as my mother's head hit the pillow, she was asleep, utterly exhausted from the stress. My father just sat in tea. He armchair, staring at the blank television screen. "Where did we go wrong with Chloe, Lauren?" he asked, his voice hollow. "You did nothing wrong, Dad. This isn't her. This is Mark." And it was. I had spent my entire adult life focused on my career. As a senior financial auditor, I was meticulous, I was careful, and I was successful. I'd been sending money home for years, first to help them pay off their mortgage, then just to make their lives easier. Chloe, my younger sister, had not been so focused. She'd drifted from one multi-level marketing scheme to the next, always desperate for a shortcut to fame and riches. Then, 2 years ago, she met Mark. Mark was an unlicensed contractor who always smelled of cheap cologne and entitlement. He saw our quiet, hardworking family as a resource to be plundered. He quickly convinced Chloe that real work was for suckers and that their path to riches was to become social media influencers. Their entire brand consisted of them posing in front of expensive cars they didn't own and in restaurants they couldn't afford. I remembered the phone call when I told the family I was buying the house for Mom and Dad. Chloe had been strangely quiet. Mark, however, had been intensely interested. "A $425,000 place, huh?" he'd said, his voice a little too casual. "Right on the water? That's a smart asset, Lauren. Real smart. You should let me inspect it for you when they move in. You know, make sure the foundation is solid." "It's a new build, Mark. It's already been inspected," I'd replied politely. Now his offer made 6 cents. He wasn't interested in the foundation, he was casing the joint. He saw an asset. He saw 2 elderly people he could easily bully and a sister, Chloe, he could manipulate. And he saw me, the busy, distant, successful daughter, as nothing more than a fool who wrote the checks. Back in my own hotel room, I opened my laptop. The auditor in me took over. The hot, red anger of the driveway faded, replaced by the cold, methodical focus that had made me a senior partner. I was not a victim. I was a strategist. Mark and Chloe were operating under a fatal assumption. They believed I had simply bought a house and put it in my parents' names. They thought that by bullying 2 elderly people, they could take possession, and that possession was ownership. They were disastrously wrong. I never, ever gift large assets directly. It's fiscally irresponsible and legally naive. I pulled up the executed documents from the sale. The $425,000 seaside house was not purchased in the names Helen and Robert. It was purchased by the Helen and Robert Family Trust. It was a revocable living trust, a legal structure I had spent weeks building with my lawyer. My parents, Helen and Robert, were the sole beneficiaries. This gave them the exclusive, legally protected right to live in and enjoy the property for the rest of their natural lives. But I, Lauren, was the trustee. The trustee holds all the legal and financial power. I am the legal owner of record. I control the asset. I can revoke, amend, or dissolve the trust at any time. Mark and Chloe weren't squatting in my parents' house. They were trespassing in my house. This was the trap. This was the leverage. But it wasn't enough to just kick them out. I needed to understand why they were so desperate, so brazen. I used my firm's access to run a full public records search on Mark. The screen lit up like a Christmas tree. It was so much worse than I'd imagined. He wasn't just a shoddy contractor, he was a serial fraudster. There were 3 active lawsuits against him from families he had taken large cash deposits from and then ghosted. He had massive credit card debt, a lien on his truck, and a court summons for unpaid child support from a previous relationship. He didn't just want the house to live in. He was planning to use it as collateral for a new loan. He was actively trying to steal it. The next morning, I returned to the house. Alone. Mark's truck was gone, but Chloe's pink convertible was still there. I found my sister on the front lawn, posing for selfies. Living my best coastal life, she chirped at her phone. Blessed new home manifesting. Chloe, I said, my voice flat as I walked up the path. She startled, dropping her phone in the grass. What do you want, Lauren? I told you we live here now. Go away. Where are Mom and Dad's belongings? I asked. In the garage, I guess. Mark's going to take all that old junk to the dump later. A cold fury I rarely allowed myself to feel washed over me. You are throwing away their clothes, their photographs. It's just stuff, Lauren. It doesn't fit the aesthetic, she whined. Chloe, listen to me very carefully. You and Mark need to get your things and be out of this house by 5 o'clock today. She burst out laughing, a shrill, ugly sound. You can't make us do anything. Mark said so. He said that since you gave the house to Mom and Dad. And we're their family, it's ours too. It's community property or something. That is not how anything works, Chloe. Mark is lying to you. You're just jealous, she suddenly shrieked, her face twisting. You're jealous that for once, I'm the one with the big fancy house. Mark is a genius. He already got a loan against this place. We're going to be rich. My blood ran cold. What did you just say? He got a loan. Yeah, she beamed, proud of her idiot husband. He said the bank approved it this morning. We just have to go sign the final papers tomorrow. Then we're renovating. The fool, the absolute arrogant fool. He was actively committing bank fraud. He didn't get a loan, Chloe. He can't. And if he told you the bank approved it, he's lying to you to get your signature on a fraudulent document. You're committing a felony. Lies, you're just a bitter old hag, she shrieked. You're trying to ruin this for me. She turned, ran inside, and slammed the heavy oak door. I heard the deadbolt slide shut. I didn't bother knocking. I returned to my car and called Arthur, my lawyer, the man who had drafted the trust. I explained the situation, from the trespassing to the attempted loan. He's attempting to secure a loan against an asset he doesn't own, Arthur said, his voice grim. That's felony bank fraud, Lauren, and he's roping your sister in as a co-conspirator. He's desperate, I said, emailing him the files I'd pulled, the lawsuits, the lien, the child support summons. He's being sued and he's out of cash. This house is his lifeline. Arthur was silent for a moment as he reviewed the files. This is more than enough. I'm going to make a call to the fraud department of the bank he's working with. They will not be pleased. In the meantime, let's serve them. He immediately drafted an official notice to vacate and a cease and desist order, explicitly citing the trust's legal structure and my authority as trustee. I hired a local process server to deliver it. That evening, my phone rang. It was Mark. He wasn't smug anymore. He was screaming. What is this legal trash you sent us? He bellowed into the phone. A trust. You think you're so smart, you little witch? You can't trick me. We're having a housewarming party on Saturday. All our friends, all of Chloe's followers. Everyone's going to see our new house. And if you show up, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Do you hear me? He was doubling down. He was trying to establish residency and create a public narrative before the law could catch up. A slow smile spread across my face. A party? That's a wonderful idea, Mark. Yeah, it is, he spat. It will be the perfect audience, I said and hung up. I immediately called Arthur. The party is on Saturday. I need you there. And I need you to contact the families who are suing him. Invite them. Tell them they might be interested in seeing the new asset Mr. Mark has just acquired with their money. Arthur chuckled. This is why you're an auditor. The trap is set. Saturday arrived. The house was packed. From the street, I could see them. Mark had strung up cheap party lights. Music was blaring. Chloe had her phone out, of course, live streaming to her small band of followers. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our amazing new mansion. Mark is just the best. He's a genius. Mark was holding court by the fireplace, a beer in his hand, telling some elaborate lie about how he flipped the house and got an incredible deal. I walked in. The music didn't exactly scratch to a halt, but a wave of silence followed me as I entered. Chloe's smile froze. "Lauren, I told you not to come," Mark sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. "This is a private party." "You did," I said, stepping aside. My parents, Helen and Robert, walked in right behind me, looking nervous but resolute. "And I brought some other guests," I added. Arthur, my lawyer, walked in, his expensive leather briefcase in hand. And right behind him were 3 couples, the families from the lawsuits. "Who the hell are you?" Mark shouted at them, looking panicked. "We're the people you stole from, Mark," one of the women shouted, pointing a finger at him. "You took our $20,000 deposit for our kitchen and disappeared." The party guests went utterly silent. Chloe's live stream was still running, her hand frozen in place. "That's a lie," Mark yelled. "Get out of my house." "Is it?" I asked calmly. I nodded to Arthur. "Mr. Mark," Arthur said, his voice booming in the sudden quiet, "you are hereby served." He handed a stack of papers to Mark. "These are lawsuits from your clients. And this," he pulled a thick, bound document from his briefcase, "is a copy of the Helen and Robert Family Trust. This document, filed with the county, states that my client, Ms. Lauren Anderson, is the sole trustee and legal owner of this property." "What?" Chloe whispered, her eyes darting between me and Mark. "Mark, what is he talking about?" "She's lying, it's a fake," Mark shouted, throwing the papers on the floor. "It's filed with the county, Mark," I said, my voice cutting through his. "As an auditor, I keep very good records. This house is mine, you are trespassers. And as for that loan you and Chloe applied for, the bank's fraud department is opening a full investigation. You tried to steal $425,000. Chloe dropped her phone. The color drained from her face as the realization hit her. You used me," she whispered to Mark, her voice cracking. "My name was on that loan application. You were going to send me to jail with you." She turned, saw a cheap vase on the mantel, and hurled it at him. It smashed against the wall. "Get out," she screamed. "Get out of my sister's house." Mark, cornered, exposed, and humiliated, just deflated. He was done. He scrambled out the back door, and the angry clients followed him out, shouting about police and prison. The party guests fled in a stampede of embarrassment and gossip. The aftermath was quiet. Mark was arrested later that week, not just for the loan fraud, but for the multiple counts of contractor fraud. He was facing serious prison time. Chloe was broken. She sat on the porch, in the exact spot my mother had cried in, and just sobbed. She wasn't an evil person, I realized. She was just weak, and so blinded by a desperate desire for a life she didn't want to earn that she'd follow any con man who promised it to her. I sat down next to her. I didn't say anything for a long time. He left me with all his debt," she finally whispered, wiping her nose. "I know," I said. "And you're going to pay it back. You're going to get a real job, and you're going to apologize to Mom and Dad every day for the rest of your life." She nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Lauren. I was so stupid. I was so jealous." I sighed and put my arm around her. "Yes, you were, but you're still my sister." It took time. We moved my parents, Helen and Robert, back into their seaside home. The cheap party lights were gone, and the antique house numbers were reinstalled. I helped Chloe file for bankruptcy to separate her finances from Mark's, and she got a humble job as a receptionist. The work was hard, but for the first time, she was earning an honest paycheck. I visited my parents a month later. I found them on the porch swing, holding hands, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "It's so peaceful, darling," my mother said, smiling as I sat with them. "It is now, Mom," I said, leaning my head on her shoulder. The house was finally what I had always intended it to be, not an asset, not a brand, but a sanctuary. Justice had been served, not just by the law, but by the simple, unavoidable, and meticulously documented truth.